anything that she does, and I'm not at all creative like Miss Kringle is. But I do have a story to tell you. So my name is Jenny Oakes, and we'll just get it out there up front that I actually retired almost 7 years ago from my career. But what didn't stop when I stopped my career was my love for helping others understand any part of my story that might help them. So if we could progress to the next slide, yeah. What I'm going to go through in trying to honor the 20 minutes of me talking and 10 minutes of y'all getting to ask some questions, I'm going to go through a few things. One is just explain the company that I used to work for, Accenture, help you understand what that company is, what they do, and why maybe I absolutely loved my career there. I then want to share with you my highlight reel. So, right, all of us know what a highlight reel is. And I want to show you the super cool stuff that I got to do because I chose the career that I chose and because I had the opportunities put in front of me that I had. I will probably end that section with a little bit about some of the other realities, right, that don't make the highlight reel, but actually, in many different sort of ways, add to the beauty of that story. After I tell you what I did at Accenture in my career, I want to go back to when I was in high school and walk you through briefly what that journey was from when I was sitting listening to people talk about their careers and being totally bored to death. So y'all are doing a great job being super polite right now. All the way from that moment until I started on my very first day at Accenture. Because my hope is, again, right, the overall objective, by telling my story, I just want to provide you all an example, some insights, maybe even some inspiration, as you walk toward your career, taking one step at a time. So, does that sound good? Yeah. Okay, let's go. Accenture, you guys know how to read, so I'm going to let you do the reading. When I joined Accenture, it was called Andersen Consulting. It was a business consulting arm of Arthur Andersen, which was an accounting company that doesn't exist anymore. Basically, when you think about Accenture and what they do, they just help businesses do what they do better. So if you think about what it takes, particularly Global 500 companies, what it takes for them to do their business, Accenture comes in every nook and cranny with expertise in that particular business, with expertise in that particular industry, technology, people, whatever it is, and Accenture just gets to help them do it better. So there's a lot of fancy language around it. There's a lot of methodologies and big words. There's a lot of expertise that do need to be brought into it. But at the base level, Accenture helps companies do what they do better. And as you can see from the right-hand side of this slide, Accenture actually does a really good job at what they do. They do a great job and have been recognized for their excellence in this field. They do a great job and have been recognized for their commitment to their employees, diversity, equity, inclusion, right? All of these aspects that help a company not just serve their clients well, but also serve their people well. So that's the environment that I got to have my career in. So when we look at the highlight reel, and by the way, sometimes it's easy for us to share our highlight reels. Sometimes it's really hard for us to share our highlight reels because we feel like we're bragging and nobody likes a bragger. I would encourage you to constantly be reflecting on what your highlight reel is, not from a place of overzealousness and false pride, but from a place of recognizing who you are, what you're capable of doing, and in my case, some of the things that I was capable of doing. So, when I first started in line consulting, I focused on resources companies. So oil and gas, electric companies, right? All sorts of utilities companies, chemical companies. Yes?
What did you major in and how'd you get this job?
Can I leave that as a cliffhanger until I get to it? Because that's part of the story.
Okay.
Yes. So when I started, I got to work with all of these huge name brand companies like ExxonMobil and all sorts of companies. I started off doing SAP implementations. So I aligned to that line of business really just because I didn't have a passion for SAP, but they paid a $25,000 bonus if you were aligned. who's gonna give up on that, right? So I started focusing on SAP, big system implementations. I was focused on primarily finance and cost accounting, working on those modules that were being implemented and figuring out how do I train people to use this new software and do it well. In the resources industry, a lot of those people had been there for decades and they knew how to do their job and were super freaked out that we were changing the way they did their job. And so what I got to do was help them through that process. I got to show them this is how you used to do it, and this is how you're going to do it, and you've got this. One of the things that I quickly became responsible for that took me on a trip to Frankfurt, Germany. Found out on Friday I needed to go to Frankfurt. Monday, had all of my sweaters packed and hopped on an airplane. I was in charge of the training databases. So when you think about a new system, you have to be able to practice it to know how to use it, but you don't want to be in the real system because that would just mess up the entire business. So we created training databases, and I was in charge of the various instances of training databases to train all of the people in cost accounting. I also got to, with SAP implementations, help the organization shift what the roles and responsibilities were, what their processes were for doing their business, so that they could better align to this new system. Super, super fun stuff. And then, when all of that was set, I got to work with the people who worked at the companies and teach them how to train others. So I got to teach them, and then they got to teach others. Super cool, really fun. I then moved into e-learning, which I know that probably touches a nerve and makes some of you guys twitch after the past couple of years. But when I started e-learning, it didn't exist. So I'm showing my age now, but the internet wasn't really a thing at this time. It was just coming onto the scene. And so e-learning was this brand new cutting edge technology. I got to fly out to Silicon Valley and work with one of the companies out there that was a quick start. It was right during the dot-com era. I got to go out there and learn all about this, and then I got to use this knowledge I had of how to do instructor-led training and change that into online training without lessening the integrity and effectiveness of how we're teaching people how to do their job. It was so cool. I got to become an e-learning expert, right? All in my 20s. This was so awesome, you guys. I then started to lead teams with big implementations. One of my favorites was at a company called TXU, and we were trying to teach all of the guys who worked out in the field how to do their processes differently. I won't even go into all the details. But right, picture the dudes who climbed the poles to fix the electrical lines having to do online learning. So we had to figure out how do we engage them and get them to actually look at a computer, and how do we make this interactive? So we had to do research at places like monster truck events, and I'm not kidding about that, because we needed to meet them where they were. So one of the e-learning modules we had literally was a monster truck event, was the backdrop through which we taught. Super, super fun. Then I got to do communication and executive alignment. So when we think about this, and we think about the people who are higher up in a company, if they're not able to speak well to whatever change is happening, their people won't trust them. If they're not able to speak consistently as to what change is happening, there won't be trustworthiness, there won't be understanding, and the culture is at risk. So I got to work with executives to figure out, here's where we are now, here's where we're going to, how do you describe that journey? What's your elevator speech? If you're in the elevator with someone for 10 floors and they say, what's going on? What do you tell them, right? I got to talk with them about how to become aligned with one another, even if inside that executive room they didn't get along or have agreement. How do you go out and authentically come together as a singular leadership team? Super, super fun stuff when I was doing my line consulting. About that time, I got married, didn't want to be traveling all the time, actually wanted to get to know my husband on a day-to-day basis, and so I moved internal. And this was a really, really cool opportunity for me, because I got to take all of those skills that I had honed while I was working with our clients and use them for Accenture, this company that I loved so much. So the first thing and the big thing on the highlight reel was when Accenture was shifting from a partnership model, right, you guys know what a partnership model is, to a public model with a traditional career trajectory. And this was a big stinking deal because it had to do with money. We had partners who were paid amazing amounts of money because of the partnership model. But we had gone public in 2001, and at this point, the partnership model was not serving us well anymore. Huge culture change, huge impact to people's checkbooks. So we needed to figure out, how do we get the partnership to vote to no longer be a partnership? And this is a global partnership. I got to be on the team who helped figure that out, not just from the org design perspective, and if not the partnership, then what? But I got to actually be in the room with the CEO and his team. As we were tabulating, I was the one who was providing reports and recommendations on, here's where the vote stands. We're seeing some holdouts in Spain, so we need to get this executive to go talk with the partners to convince them that Spain needs to vote for this. It looks like we're lagging in the Southeast, so we need to get these people to go talk to them. I got to be part of that. Amazing, right? Nobody ever knows my name, but I got to be in the room, and it was super cool. And then after, the next highlight really goes when I started working locally and just looking at that time in the Dallas location of, how do we grow this business? How do we grow our client base? How do we continue to service and serve well the clients we have and grow that business? But then also, how do we care for our employees? How do we make sure that they're engaged? How are we addressing DEIA issues? How are we working with people in mental health issues? I got to help a 1,200-person location really sort through and figure that out. And then, when I knew it was my swan song, was the day I got a call from a guy named Jorge Benitez. If you look up at the very top, he was my very first partner on my very first SAP implementation. Fast forward almost a decade and a half, and Jorge said, I'm being named the CEO for North America. Will you be my chief of staff? And I can still picture where I was when I got that phone call. And I remember specifically thinking, it's not going to get any better than this. When he retires, I will too. And so I got to spend the next 3 years of my career working as the chief of staff. He told me, I want you to be this person because you won't just tell me yes. You understand our business, you know me, and you know how I think, and you're going to be honest with me. I got to be his soundboard. I also got to represent him. He and I had this constant conversation. What is Jorge required, and where can Jenny fit in? What is Jorge required? What do you need to focus your valuable time on, Jorge? And where can I be the one to represent you? So I got to be a representative of him. We would do all of the meeting and speech writing preparation, and it was everything from him being in a closed session with President Barack Obama to him being in a business roundtable meeting with Michael Dell and all of the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies getting together to figure out how legislation and private business can work together. I helped him with all of his speeches, including one of my very favorites, although I still won't forgive him because he didn't invite me to be there in person, but he and Usher, like musician Usher, spoke together, and I got to write his speech for that. So write really cool things where I knew his voice, and I got to speak his voice to others. It's my highlight reel, right? Most of this probably my kids don't even know that I did, because nobody walks around you seeing what your career is, which is why you need to continue really thinking about, what is that highlight reel? If somebody were to ask you, what would that be? But this is mine. I loved every minute of my career. In between all of those times, there were boring assignments, there was data input, there was cost modeling, there was fighting with Excel, trying to figure out formulas for budgeting. There were very mundane things. And all of those worked together to refine my skills, to help me with my understanding, to help me with my knowledge and experience so that I could live out that highlight reel. Okay, so to the wonderful question, how did I get there? So I was in high school. When I was in high school, I cared about my grades a lot, a whole lot. I also cared deeply about cheerleading. That was my love. And this was my senior year. We did win 3rd place in the state championship, I'm just saying. I loved the yearbook. I started my freshman year in yearbook. I learned the ropes. I was the editor for the academic section my sophomore year, and then I was editor-in-chief of the yearbook for the next 2 years. I loved yearbook. And I knew I wanted to go to a D1 football school that was not in New Mexico, which is where I grew up. So when I was in high school, this is me. I'm second from the left, holding the trophy. That was me. That's where I was. I had no idea that that highlight reel could even be dreamed of. And in all honesty, most of the highlight reel didn't even exist at that time. So I went to college. I went to a D1 school, Baylor University, graduated cum laude with a degree in journalism with a minor in marketing. Does that have anything to do with technology, do you think? No, but it was because I dreamed of being editor-in-chief of a magazine. I knew what I loved in high school. I knew what I wanted to pursue. I knew what I was good at. I knew I was not good at math and science, so I took the least amount of those classes as I could. I was an officer in my sorority for 4 years and was a leader in many other organizations, including Mortarboard, the Baylor Leadership Council. I looked for every opportunity I could to hone those leadership skills. And I had a lot of fun. Those were 3 of my best friends from college. So I got this degree in journalism. What's next? Well, what was next was hilarious, because let's all just notice the Hawaiian shirts on these old ladies. They were bad even then. And it was, though, 4 of those 5 ladies are still a part of my life, are still mentors, are still friends, are still the people who said, I believe in you, Jenny Stork, and I know you can go and do great things. I met those women because after I finished college, I decided to I was hired to travel for my sorority. I thought that it would be a really fun way to get to see the United States and not have to pay for it. But what I didn't know is that as I was doing it, my trajectory changed. What I thought I wanted to do was still there. Those skills and abilities that I had recognized in myself all the way back in high school, had refined further in college, they were still there. But I started to discover some other things that I was really good at. Things like listening to people and quickly assessing a situation to understand what is the issue and how can I help solve it. And then once we have that understanding of how to solve it, how can I equip you to do that? I realized I was really good at coming into situations and building trust quickly. People knew I was earnest and that I actually cared. And so they trusted me to help them. And so I got to spend this beautiful year, right, sometimes in, right, silliness, but with people who believed in me, gave me that opportunity, honing skills that I knew I had and learning skills that I didn't know I had. My year of traveling for Tri-Delta was up in July. And if we flip to the next slide, we'll see that I did not start at Accenture until January. It was a very, very humbling 6 months for me as I packed up my life, moved back home, and worked retail, living with my mom and dad. And what happened during those 6 months as I was applying to PhD programs, as I was working with headhunters, as I was sorting through what is the next right thing, my roommate, who I was going to be living with in Dallas, said, "What do you want to do, Jenny?" And I said, "I want to help people. I want to be able to go and tell them, this is how you can do what you're doing, but do it better. And I want to be able to teach and communicate." And she said, "That's what I do." And I said, "Well, what do you do?" She said, "I'm a business consultant. for Anderson Consulting. And a couple months later, that was me, go back one more, this was me at my start group lunch in Chicago where we had training. And just to note, a lot more men than women in business consulting at this time. I am glad to say that the ratios are starting to shift, but this was the environment that I was walking into. The other thing I want to say is that I was recruited for my first project before I left training. And it wasn't because they looked at me and said, oh, you have incredible IT skills, or you know how to do SAP. I didn't. They knew I could communicate. They knew I could quickly learn new skills. They knew that I was an authentic and dependable person. And they knew that I wanted to serve well. And so that's what happened. That's how I got to that highlight reel. As soon as I was hired, I wondered why they hired me, because the learning curve was so steep, I had no idea if I could do it. But you guys know the end of the story. I could do it. I have a highlight reel to share. And it's not because I was prepared academically necessarily and skilled in those places. It's not because I was always the smartest person in the room, but it was because I worked hard. If I said I was going to do something, I did it. I knew how to treat people with integrity and respect and honor. And I knew how to learn more quickly and confidently than anyone else in the room. So that's my story. If we want to fast forward to questions, because I think we're getting there. Yes?
So my sister just graduated Tridel. Do you think it was this already instilled in you, or do you think it was partly the Tridel culture, Delta, how can I help you, that led you to wanting to be, somebody that helps people for your job?
That is a wonderful question. I will maintain my Tri-Delta experience shaped me tremendously. And I think anytime you choose to become involved in an organization, particularly in college, for me, that was one of the main organizations, you have the opportunity to learn and grow as a leader. It's how you choose to enter into it. For me, I wanted to learn and grow as a leader, and that was the environment in which I could do it. And I was surrounded by people who believed in me and gave me the opportunity. So absolutely, it was formative. Yes. So, and it was so formative that I actually serve on the executive board. So I took all of my, I took all of my business experience, and I'm now applying it to Tri-Delta on the executive board of directors. Yeah? Yeah, what else? Yes? I'm sorry, say that again? The increase in automation. This is the thing that's interesting, and I read this quote recently, is our objective is not to create redundancy in people, but redundancy in tasks. So in my experiences that I had, I did not see it having a negative effect with the automation, because in the companies for which I worked, there were always more things that could not be done without a human being. At the end of the day, we can make it automated, we can make it efficient, we can make it effective, we can do all of these things, but we can't do it without people. So I can't speak to everyone's experience in that very interesting question, but I can speak to mine. And if anything, we need more humanity. We needed more people to do what we were calling them to do. Does that help? Okay, any other questions? Yeah. I got a job offer. I mean, really, it is so much about the opportunity at the moment. And what I realized when I got that job offer is it did take me off the path. And I will say, I did get offered to be editor of a magazine before that, but it was a very small magazine in a company for which I did not want to work. The job offer came for consulting, and I said yes, because it got me to the next right thing. I didn't know at that time that next right thing would be a career I had so much passion for. And I did not know it would be a career in which I would use those skills of journalism, of communication, of editing, of all of those things that I loved doing in that particular career. But I used it every day of my life, and I still maintain that's part of what differentiated me and part of what helped my career track to be fast-tracked. Great question. Yeah.
How did you feel like the mundane parts of your job, like things that you like different and enjoy, to like get to that high level?
You know, it's interesting because most of it is mundane in the moment. And then when you look back, you're like, actually, that was super cool. Now, the really mundane, like the stuff that I don't look back on and say that was super cool, you recognize humility, right? You have to be in a place of openness and humility to learn, even if what you're working on is a spreadsheet and finding the right problem in a formula. I mean, my eyes would go batty looking at Excel. Not what you would say you wanted to do, certainly not what we were talking about when we were recruiting. And that taught me to be thorough. That taught me to be detailed. That taught me the next time that question came up, how to look for it and how to find those problems. It also gave me insight into whatever that data was. If I was cleaning up data, I was reading what it was because that was teaching me. And so even the mundane things, you can still find learning opportunities if you humble yourself to be open to that. Yeah. Okay. Great question.
I have one.
Yeah.
You're a fantastic networker. Can you give some advice about how much time do you spend networking in a week? And how did you nurture your relationship with Benito, the call from heaven?
Oh, I know,
Yeah?
right? I was true to who I was. I am a nice person, and I didn't let corporate America make me not nice. I'm an authentic person, and so I only engaged in conversations that I naturally would be engaged in. I never put on a pretense to be someone I wasn't, and if I said I would do something, I did it. And so those relationships were built not because I looked in a room and I said, I want to go to Tennessee, I need to go talk to this girl because she has connections. It wasn't a beeline. It was, I don't know you. Who are you and what are you doing today? Right? The authenticity of recognizing people are people and we need to honor and respect them. By doing that for 18 years caused Jorge to know me and trust me. He pulled me onto several projects. He knew me and he knew my integrity. The other piece of it that I'll share is at the time that he asked me to be chief of staff, I was working part-time. I continued working part-time as chief of staff because he knew that I could get more done for him working part-time than somebody else working full-time. That just happens by being true to who you are.
One more question? Anybody? We're good? Okay, thank
Okay.
you so
Thank you guys so